Welcome to a special edition of Being Human. Once in a while, we pause our regular episodes and we highlight a movie or a TV show and we analyze it through the lens of all the theories and tools that we teach here on Being Human. Today, we're focusing on Inside Out 2.
Woohoo!
We'll also talk a little bit about Inside Out, the original movie. And so, hey, if somebody sent you this episode and you don't know anything about us, my name is Steve Cuss.
I'm Lisa Cuss.
And most of the time, our episodes are a traditional podcast where we're interviewing a guest. Mm-hmm. Sometimes Lisa and I are on together. Lisa is a therapist. I'm a pastor. I've written a couple of books. And what we both do is help you notice and name and diffuse anxiety triggers in you and also in your people and around you so that you can be human-sized and so that you can relax into God's presence. That's kind of what we do in a nutshell. I made it sound easy.
There's a whole lot more, but yes.
But that's kind of what we do.
Check.
Yeah. And so you can, chase this on other episodes and learn the tools and listen to some great guests and so on. But one of the features of our podcast is even though for many people they're listening, not watching, we light a candle.
Yeah.
Why do we light a candle?
We light a candle to remind us that God is with us and in control and over all, that in our daily lives, I don't know if any of you are like me, but I can begin to think that the whole day is on my shoulders, that the outcome of things in my life and others' lives are all on my shoulders, that I have to think my way and worry my way toward peace. And when we can lean into the fact that we have the absolute gift of a God who loves us, of a Jesus who is God's son and live life understanding the struggle that humans go through, and a Holy Spirit that is there to guide us and comfort us and to bring wisdom, that we realize we're not alone and it's not all on us, and we can lean into that goodness.
Yeah. So we'll have a candle lit through the episode. Let's get into the twin movies, Inside Out, which was released 9 years ago, wild.
I know.
And the most recent movie at the movie theaters, Inside Out 2. If you're not familiar with the show, it's a Pixar movie. It's an animated movie. I wouldn't really say the main character is Riley, but Riley is the human. In the first movie, Inside Out, she's preteen. In Inside Out 2, she just starts to move into adolescence.
Which is a little bit confusing that we wait 9 years for
between
one birthday.
Movie releases.
Yeah, for one birthday.
She's 1 year older.
She's 1 year older.
Yeah. But the big idea being she's preteen and now she's entering into the adolescent phase.
Puberty, which is a funny scene.
Yeah.
In the movie.
But the real genius of Inside Out is, as it's titled, you very quickly realize Riley's not really the main character. You get inside her brain, her head, which they very wonderfully call her headquarters.
Yeah.
And you see like this almost NASA level control station and all of these different people, these personalities running Riley's life. So you get kind of inside. So you see what Riley's doing in her behaviors, but then you get in her brain. So helpful.
And so identifiable, right?
Right.
That as you're watching, you're like, holy cow, I can relate to that, this 13-year-old. So in the first movie, the main character actually is Joy.
Yeah.
And that we see this, beautiful character that is at work in Riley, just wanting her to do well, to have fun, to not experience any pain, to not struggle, and to not feel anything but something just positive and good, right?
It's played by Amy Poehler, who was born to play. She's so cheerful. But then what we learn through the movie is she's like militantly cheerful. Maybe you'd say she has to be cheerful to be okay.
Controlling cheerful.
Yeah. So if you are not familiar with the movie, just picture like some kind of an engineering board which is running Riley's life, and Joy is always trying to be in the center seat.
Yes.
But then there's other characters as well there.
And Joy doesn't trust anything else. That's the big thing, right? That Joy is like, if I am in control, then we can keep everything positive and okay. So then I'd say the second most popular character is Sadness.
Played by Phyllis from The Office. If people are familiar with Phyllis in The Office.
And the voice. Oh my gosh.
And just a little fun fact, the actress came out of retirement to play Sadness in Inside Out 2. She had retired from acting and she's like, I got to do it again.
Yeah. So even the posture of Joy is like, like up and like, let's go, and runs fast, and Sadness, like the posture is just hunched over and talks slowly and looks down, and you can feel what they all bring.
Yeah. Every sentence ends on a low note.
Yeah. But Sadness is looking for and wanting Riley to feel all the feels, and Joy is wanting Riley to feel nothing but happiness through this.
Yeah.
And then we have Fear. I don't know who that voice is.
I didn't dig into some of the other actors, I got to confess.
Yeah, represented by the color purple, this character, and always bringing up what possibly could happen that we might need to stay away from. And then you've got Anger, which is, I don't know who that one is either.
No.
Is red, and just anything that goes wrong, smoke's going, and wants to take over the joystick of, the control panel, just to let everybody have it, so that, in Anger's perspective, so that Riley can be okay.
And what's funny about the first Inside Out, you watch it and you suddenly realize, I am more one of these than the other. Like, I tend to be militantly needing to be joyful. I struggle to experience sadness, for example. We all know people that love to rant. It's almost like these parts inside them have taken over their whole personality.
Yes. And they're so relatable.
So then Inside Out 2 comes along.
Yeah.
And we get some new characters.
Yeah. So we have Ennui that shows up and always is just on the phone and doesn't care.
He's French.
French Ennui, just kind of playing on his phone, whatever. Yeah, just kind of lethargy.
Yeah, lethargic, indifferent.
Yeah.
Checked out, totally. If I remember right, he shows up and he has his own couch.
I think so.
And he's not at the control board. He's always on the couch, just like,
whatever will happen.
You do you.
Yeah. I hate that phrase.
I know you do, yeah.
And then we have Nostalgia that makes an entrance, I think, twice.
Yeah, it doesn't show up much.
And I wanted Nostalgia more because Nostalgia's coming in, remember when we all, just wanting to bring back to those, precious moments. I kind of like Nostalgia.
Yeah, and she's a little bitty. She's like a 1950s blue rinse hair with a little
glasses
handbag. Yeah,
and like I'll remember.
She probably knits.
Yeah, she probably does.
Yeah.
And then the big character is Anxiety that enters Riley just as she is beginning to try out for a high school ice hockey team as well. And so the main character in this one is Anxiety, and the way Anxiety will come in and take over the control board of Riley's life for the purpose of her doing well, getting what Anxiety thinks she needs to be okay, and in its wake, leaving all kinds of havoc.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of people would say this is a parts of self movie. This is an internal family systems movie. So now we're in your field.
Yeah.
This is work that you do with people, is you help them locate parts of themselves. If you're not familiar with parts of self or IFS, it's a relatively newer theory. Can you give us a minute on it?
Yeah. Internal family systems was developed by Richard Schwartz in the 1980s. And it was developed by him leading a group of women who were struggling with eating disorder. And he realized at the end of this group work that they kept saying, I know what I should do in this, but there's still a part of me that feels this way, or there's still a part of me that wants to reach for everything unhealthy that I know is going to trigger me. There's this part of me that just goes into sabotage, and then I reach for whatever to calm myself. And so this whole idea of the parts of us that take over and wrestle with each other, he did a lot with this to develop this new family, or this new therapy that is internal family systems, that there's a system inside of us. And so a lot of therapists are really grabbing onto this. I do a lot of this through a faith lens in my own work, because the whole idea is that when we are in our centered self, that we have the power to be human and connected, and that healing is there. And of course, with our belief system, I believe that when we are in our spirit-led self, that when we are aware of Imago Dei, of God with us, and when we can lean into his power and his truth and the Holy Spirit with us, that through Christ, right, we have the power and the invitation to healing, so that anxiety doesn't have to rule our lives, right? So that sadness can be there, but doesn't have to rule our lives.
Yeah.
So that's the whole idea is, and then through faith lens, just being connected to, as we did with the candle, God with us, spirit-led self.
It makes me think of Paul in Romans 7. I know this is a passage that you use with your clients a lot.
Yeah.
The things I wish I did, I don't do. The things I don't want to do, I find myself doing.
And you can almost hear a grunt.
Like that frustration. Why? Why do I do the things? So even today, I want to exercise. I don't want to exercise. But I've learned a lot from you. Like, it's really helpful. It ends up being a kindness to notice that there's parts of me and it's not all of me. This is really powerful, I think, in addiction, when people go into tremendous shame when they fall off the wagon again. And you've done a lot of work helping people realize there's a part of me that is trying to get something, but that's not my identity, for example.
Right.
I'm rooted and established in Christ.
Yeah. So the basis of this and of the movie, because a lot of people are saying, is Inside Out, is it IFS based? And I think Inside Out does a beautiful job of bowing its head to internal family systems, because it helps us see, and they use feelings as characters, right? Which sometimes it can be, but it helps us see that we have these different parts in us that have been activated by previous experiences in our life. And whether they're feelings or belief systems, they helped us cope, right?
Yeah.
So even as we look at our false needs, right? That perfectionism is a part in us, that it's a way that helps us cope when we feel like we have to be good enough, you know? So the whole idea is Inside Out 2 uses feelings to show parts. In reality, we can have their belief systems. So pessimism can be a part. Procrastination can be a part. Perfectionism, your inner critic, is a part. You know, extreme sadness can be a part, but it's something that shows up and will take over for us.
It's interesting with pessimism and like cynicism, or even edgy sarcasm, not playful sarcasm, but sarcasm that has like that passive aggressive. That's a fascinating idea, that that's a protective part of yourself. What's it protecting us from? When I'm cynical or pessimistic, what's it protecting me from?
You know, the reality is that cynicism or sarcasm would have come up at some point in our youth and probably protected us from feeling things that we didn't have the tools to feel or experience. So the whole idea is that the parts that we have at one time actually helped us survive or thrive, and that the intention of all our parts are good. And you can see this in Inside Out too. Like, each of these emotional parts are good and want good for Riley. And each of the parts that we have, the intention is good, but oftentimes they're stuck in earlier times in our lives and don't realize that we have access to God, right? That we have a Holy Spirit with us. They often don't realize that we've grown up and have other tools and resources, and it's no longer all on us.
This may be a bit simplistic, but is the part trying to take God's seat in our life and run our life, and that's why it's harder to notice God when you're all disintegrated?
Yeah, I mean, I usually teach this as a car, and it's like, if God is in the driver's seat and we have anxiety in the back seat, then we're going to be really aware of things, but also in tune with God with us, right?
I like to keep sadness like in the trailer.
Like
the trailer. I don't even want sadness not even in the back seat.
Yeah, but when sadness comes over and that's all we experience, that's all we can see, then yeah, it takes the seat where really God should be.
Okay, so in Inside Out 2, Riley is actually a very skilled ice hockey player.
Mm-hmm.
She's moving into adolescence. And so what I love about the movie is you get to see what happens, and then you don't just get to see what's going on in her headquarters. Sometimes the movie, and it's very playful,
Oh, yeah.
it'll bounce around the different headquarters of like mom and dad. I think even the referee at one point
Oh, gosh.
has a headquarters. And so, for example, if you're not familiar with the movie, you can imagine what it's like to be an adolescent young lady. She's going to ice hockey camp, like a summer camp. Ironically, I think it was a summer camp for ice hockey. We don't need to get into that. She's got her two best friends. As they're driving to camp, her best friends say that they're moving
to a different school.
And now Riley is going to be alone. And so she's showing up to this camp with this fractured friendship. Even though her friends are her friends, she's now made meaning out of them going to a different
She's already
school.
separated herself from them and feels alone and wants to impress everybody else and thinks that she must make the varsity level in order to be okay.
Yeah, in order for her to be somebody. And so she then ends up at this camp, kind of alienating her loyal friends, trying to anxiously make new friends. At some points when she's back home with her parents, you'll see Riley in her bedroom, and mom comes in and Riley just blows up. Now, because we are in the movie and in her head, we see everything going on in that poor young girl's brain.
And we know why she's blowing up.
But her poor mum is just walking in to say something like, hey, time for dinner. And suddenly mum gets this, whoa.
And I don't know if you have preteens or teens in your home, but that scene, I think everybody can relate to. What happened and what did I do?
Well,
and of course, it's nothing about what the mom did.
Right.
It's everything else that's going on.
But then you get in the mum's brain, and she's making, her little headquarters parts are making meaning out of the behavior. And I, as a dad, I was so enjoying watching Riley blow up, the mum freak out, but then they went and showed the dad. That's not fair. And the dad is triggered by the disrespect, the protection of his wife. His anger part is taken over. And I'm like, okay, this is no longer a funny movie.
Yeah, that's right. Because,
it's now a documentary.
Hurts to be seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. The beauty of this, though, is that when we have the privilege of seeing what all is going on in somebody else, we almost feel defensive of Riley. And, mom, don't feel bad. If only you knew this is just a part of her taking over. And the beauty of this, too, is that, man, if we could see conflict and reactivity as somebody's part and not all of them or what they really want, man, it triggers a sense of grace in us that it's man, your anger part or your self-sabotage part is triggering control or whatever, my control part, and it becomes a parts dance and battle rather than me against you. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I mean, to be frank, I've learned so much about parenting from you in this, your ability to look past our kids' initial reaction to something and get to what's really going on. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think when I was a young parent, if I felt disrespected, I wouldn't have been able to say this at the time. My parts are activated. Now me and my child are disconnected, but I'm also disconnected from myself. Mm-hmm. And then I watch you let them have that initial affront and then just keep chipping away at what's really going on. It's a game changer if you can have empathy for someone else rather than catch their reactivity.
Yeah.
Easy to say.
Really hard to do. And I do not do that all the time. I will tell you that.
Sure. Yeah.
And so will our kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So Inside Out, the simple idea that we all have a headquarters, there's a lot going on in there. And if you can just commit to agreeing there's a lot going on in other people, even Lisa, as simple as when you're on social media, honestly, and you see someone post and it triggers a part in you, if you can first just say, you know what, there's a lot going on in that person. And I would just say the other thing is another comment from you is not going to help. They're not going to say, thank you for putting me in my place. I realize now I'm wrong and an idiot. It's not going to happen. But just this basic human decency, it would go a long way.
Yeah. one of the things we wanted, because so much of what we do is anxiety related, is the character of anxiety in this movie. I mean, honestly, like we went to Inside Out 2 and we wept.
Yeah.
We were like, I'm going to like choke up just thinking about it. But the way they portrayed anxiety so like in a spin, and there's a panic scene that happens toward the end of the movie, and you feel it. And I think it's one of those where you're like, yes, it makes sense, you know? And you've got anxiety trying to control everything, not let joy in, not let sadness in, you know, not let fear can kind of come in, but not let anybody else take over, trying to control Riley's sense of self. And it's powerful to watch anxiety trying to do that. And then the realization, you know, when panic sets in, that anxiety can't do it all and needs all the other feelings and characters as well. We were just like a mess.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that anxiety does is it tells you to just keep trying harder at whatever it is. And so in this movie, Riley must have the approval of the popular captain on the team.
Yes.
And therefore, I'm sure most of us have experienced this. You have such a driving false need that you actually sabotage the very thing you were trying to get.
Yes.
I know when we would have new staff, especially when they were really young, maybe like for some of our staff, we were their first ever full-time job. That's wild to think about.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of us old grizzly veterans would sit down and say, hey, you probably feel a tremendous pressure to prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We just want you to know the more you try to prove yourself, the less connected you're going to be.
Yeah.
If you just show up exactly as yourself, we are not expecting you to be an expert. You're a rookie. You're young. Lead with that. Be a rookie. Come in and learn and grow. And we were trying to, I don't know how well we did, but we were trying to say to people, your well-meaning effort to get the false need is actually going to cause damage. And that's really well shown in Inside Out 2. Anxiety ends up kind of causing like a tornado around the control panel of Riley's life. It does a lot of damage.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that was a great example. Anxiety says needs the approval of the senior team members.
Yeah.
Needs for the coach who's making all the choices to see her as perfect and even better than she possibly can be.
Yep.
Right. So she's like not sleeping. She's going there at like 3 a.m. to be able to practice and be able to perform well. And Riley's wanting to also the approval of her other friends, but feels caught knowing that she can't do it, but trying to do both.
It's fascinating when you watch the movie, you can see she's on a path to destruction.
Yeah.
Like she's getting to the ice rink hours before anyone else. She's exhausting herself. She's not eating right, sleeping right. And then you can also see with the challenge with her loyal long-term friends, she's going to hurt one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then we won't give away a whole lot in the movie, but there is a turning point where she physically hurts one of her friends because she's so focused on approval that she's lost sight of reality.
Yeah.
It's always easier to see in someone else.
Isn't it?
It's so hard to see when you're on the path to death. Yeah.
And how we flip it, right? What do we really want? We want to connect for who we are at the core of who someone else is. We want to feel seen, but we think we want approval for the sake of connection.
Right.
And it's just a dynamic that gets flipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we're so passionate about encouraging people to be human-sized. It's the fastest way to really have deep connection with everybody, yourself, God, your people, even difficult people. If you are connected, you have a capacity to connect with difficult people more.
Yeah. I will say, if you haven't seen this movie, just as I work with a lot of teens and college age, and the overwhelming response I heard was, I felt so seen, you know? And I had several that were just like, that panic attack scene is right on. And if I had known, you know, they're like, if I had known earlier in my life, the role that anxiety is trying to play, but also because of that, what I cannot see, things might have been different. So it's just, it's an incredible look at what goes on inside of us when there's a huge imbalance in our system.
Yeah. Okay, so one big aspect of the movie is this headquarters, this control panel, and all of these characters vying for access to the control panel of Riley's life. But there's a whole other deeper side to the movie where all of Riley's memories in her brain become they look like bowling balls. They're these kind of translucent, beautiful glass spheres. And behind the characters, Joy, Sadness, and everyone, there's thousands
Oh my
of
gosh.
these bowling balls. Each of them are a particular memory. At the end of the day, when Riley goes to sleep, all of the characters get to rest, but they send these bowling balls, these memories, down into the deeper part of Riley's brain.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea Inside Out is suggesting that our memories then form our beliefs. The bowling balls all go down to the deeper part of Riley's brain. There's like a lake down there where they're all floating. And then through quite a complex way, they form these strands that come back up and form Riley's belief and herself.
Yeah, they call them core memories.
The core memories.
They're wanting to filter through what's going to be a core memory that creates a belief system out of her, what's going to be just a memory that maybe she'll remember, maybe she won't.
And so Joy, the character Joy, is often selecting which memory gets to go to the core memories. Oh, this is a great one. This not so much. And then in the movie, anxiety wreaks havoc on the memories. But I'd be curious your opinion on this idea. It's a helpful way to think about it. Is it true? Is it that our memories form our beliefs? Is it that simple?
I mean, I think our memories, I think it's the perception of our memories that form our beliefs.
Or the meaning we make from our memories.
Yeah, our memories actually are the meaning that we make. But what I find is the healthier we get, our memories can sometimes change, or we see a bigger view of them. I know, with trauma, one of the things that trauma will do is that it will isolate so that you can have one memory that you remember in a situation or in a period of your life. And some people say, I can't remember anything else.
Yeah.
Right? I know other things. I just can't remember anything else. And the more healing we get, then we can see, oh my gosh, there was so much more life going on, or I was experiencing other things, not just this.
Yeah.
And so it does then impact our belief system. It's
Yeah.
kind of convoluted.
It's complicated because as people of faith, we are trying to place our trust and faith in God, which God is bedrock truth, God is reality, but we are dependent on our memories and beliefs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the work you and I are doing nowadays is helping people detangle their precious belief in Jesus from their core beliefs about themselves.
Yes.
We find, particularly us in the West, we syncretize our anxious beliefs with our faith in Jesus.
Yes.
And so it is this difficult journey to say, I've always believed this is true about God. Is it really what God says, or was my memory infecting it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, Inside Out 1, the whole point at the end was that joy and sadness work really well together.
Mm.
That it's the whole theme of both and, that you can experience loss and you can grieve and you can also have joy, and that both can occur in us at the same time. And I think the older we get, and, just with the work I do, a lot of people I work with will have memories in their life that caused a lot of pain. And sometimes the underlying question was, where was God when?
Yeah.
And the more work we do to realize, what is God's view of pain? And understanding the invitation of God, even when pain was there, it changes, it changes it adds to the memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just not one of doom, but there's also one of hope and invitation, and there's permission for the wider view of everything that was experienced to lead to hope.
Yeah, and the Inside Out movies are not faith-based movies.
They're not faith-based.
But it's interesting to imagine if they were,
Oh,
and that Riley could go to ice hockey camp knowing what's true, which is her relationship with her best friends will change but is not in jeopardy. That's
yes.
what's true. Her best chance of connecting is to be herself rather than to try to impress everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And we also help people with this a lot, is when you are relaxed into God's presence, you have a better chance of seeing what's actually true. So for me, at a very simple level, I used to feel so much pressure on every sermon. But then I learned, no, what's true is God is sovereign and I've done my work. I'm not lazy as a preacher, but even though I would do all my preparation, I would still feel more pressure than God was asking me to carry in making sure this sermon changed the world or whatever it was. It was always a unreachable outcome. So learning to know that God is with you can so right-size your parts to where your spirit-led self is really in the driver's seat.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'd also say, Lise, none of us are able to do this all the time. We're just trying to do it for more moments in our life, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And the whole goal is exactly what you're saying. When we are aware of our sense of self and that that's found in God, then anxiety can be there, but not taking over. And you know what? Some stress, some anxiety helps us think through things, right? That we might need to think through, but it's not taking over us. And that sadness is meant to be felt. Jesus got sad.
Right.
That it is, all of these are emotions that are created, God-given in our nervous system, and they're needed. It's when they take over that it causes such havoc and confusion at who we are, who we're not, who God is, and who he's not.
So some deeper work you can do is you can look at the emotions and you can just grab the ones from inside out and just ask yourself, which of these am I suspicious of? Mm-hmm. So I'm suspicious of anger and sadness. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid of their power. I've done some of this work. I'm afraid of my power when I'm angry. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid of the power of anger to destroy me if it comes from someone else. And I don't know why I'm afraid of sadness, but I am. I'm definitely afraid of sadness. So you can just look at the parts, and then you can also ask yourself, I wonder which one tends to take over. And that's what Inside Out 2, you see anxiety just taking over. But especially as a follower of Christ, what I love about the movie is it shows that joy is not always the good thing.
Right.
But I think in the church, we sing songs about joy, right? Like we kind of militantly need joy. Right. You call it spiritual bypassing. Mm-hmm. And I would just say, therefore, my work is not to take sadness from the trailer and put it in the passenger seat. I'm not going to do that. But I can let him visit the back seat for a while. I can just kind of, and you help me do that as well.
Yeah. And I would say I'm suspicious of anger and fear, and for different reasons, right? Like, anger, I think, is probably wrong to experience.
Yeah.
It's not, but I think my belief
Your belief says it is.
My belief system says it's wrong, even though it's not. And fear, I can just hate the feeling of if it takes over me.
Yeah.
But the reality is that when we can take fear and then bring that as, it's almost like, I'm feeling fear. This is an alert system that I need to bring this back to God and refind my strength and my trust in him and bring the fear to him. Then we can hold it and be curious rather than be overtaken by fear.
Yeah, and it's embarrassing to admit we've learned some of this later in our marriage. I'm an adventure hound. I grew up on the ocean and spent a lot of time, not just at the beach, but in the open ocean. And you had no such experience. And early in our marriage, I was often trying to drag you into these very, what for me felt safe and for you
Let's go have a fun adventure because there's so much joy. And I'm like, let's die. That's what we're going to do. We're going to die.
Yeah. And I mean, truly, it's like, oh man, this is something I should have known. But as recently as I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, asking Lisa to come in the middle of the night, pitch black, swim with manta rays with me in the open ocean. I'm so excited because for me, it's like, we do it together. And you were incredibly gracious to do it with me. We've got a lot of funny stories. We might tell the whole story one day. But just recognizing, I think Lisa and I both came out of that experience recognizing you were working 20 times harder than I was. I'm in the ocean saying, look at God, he's so good. And you're in the ocean saying, what can kill me now?
Yes.
And I just didn't realize that. So even learning what each of us are activated by, our protective mechanisms, this was another thing as we kind of wrap up this episode. The way they portrayed in the movie compassion toward our parts, that is something that we have tried. We are on a journey and trying to do for each other and all of our people. Tell us about that. That was a lot of the weeping for me, is watching the compassion toward the self in that movie.
Yeah, and I think that's where at the end, it's just a powerful, does bring tears. It's a powerful scene when all of these parts realize that each of them are trying to work for good and they need each other. And there's a compassion for the part that all can play together. And so, yes, for us, and when we can have compassion on the fear that we have and look into, how did it get there and why? When we can have compassion for the sense of joy for, yes, it's needed and must it always be there, that there's a reason for it. The compassion opens us up to some curiosity of what's going on inside of us and perhaps what the Lord might want to do with it, rather than the strict anger is not allowed, stuff it, or fear is not allowed, stuff it. And it changes our posture and makes us more compassionate to ourselves, to the unknown, and to others that we don't understand.
Yeah. So this is a big takeaway of this movie is self-compassion is not selfish. What we're trying to do as Christians is be as compassionate to ourselves as God is to us. And then we discover that's actually the fuel that allows us to love our neighbor. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Our organization, Capable Life, we have a free course on this, and it's wonderfully titled, Put Yourself on Your Conscious List of Relationships. Now, if that title doesn't sell the course, but what we're helping you do in that, it's a very simple course. It's one video and one self-assessment, is we're helping you notice the areas where you are harsher to yourself than you are to your people. And then we have you compare, how does God treat you? How do you treat yourself? And so that's kind of where we want to end this episode. We'll put a link in the show notes for anyone. It's a free course. You can just take it.
Absolutely.
But boy, it's life-changing, isn't it, to learn to approach yourself with compassion. And then you do really see that you have more horsepower for compassion for others. I kind of feel like we need that in 2024.
Just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit.
So we have 6 or 8 of these special bonus episodes this season where we take a movie or a TV show. And you can help us. If you have a movie or a TV show that you would like us to watch,
send it in.
And then analyze, we'll do it. And obviously there's some screening, there's some censoring we have to look at. And then if it's a super independent movie that 7 people have watched, we may not do it.
But we'll enjoy it ourselves.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it. But help us out. We've got a couple in the pipe, but we've got some slots for anyone that wants to choose a movie.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. Thanks for joining us.
All right. We'll see you next time.